The Gunn effect seems to be in full force for speculators. We're going to take a look on this video at Superman spec. And is that gun a six-shooter, or is it loaded with kryptonite bullets? Up next on this video from Bronzeville Comics. Hey there, comic book community. This is Jim from Bronzeville Comics coming to you with another video. And before we get started, please like, comment, subscribe, do all that great stuff. Follow us on the other socials. Instagram, Bronzeville_comics, Whatnot at Bronzeville_comics. If you're not yet on Whatnot, there is a link in the description where you can get $10 off your free purchase with any vendor. Also in the description is my email and a link to my eBay store. So we all know that James Gunn has been tapped to lead the DC universe, the film and television, and there's a lot of moving pieces, a lot of controversy, a lot of fans unhappy with the choice that Henry Cavill will no longer be portraying Superman. And the little bit of information we do know in terms of specifics about what they're actually going to do as opposed to what they're not going to do, we know a lot about what's been canceled and people that are no longer coming back, but we have very little about is what we're actually going to see. And we do have information. Gunn himself stated that he is writing the script to a Superman movie that will have a young Superman, and they want to cast an actor younger than Henry Cavill. And if you're looking at a 10-year plan, I think that makes sense. We've seen Superman in so many iterations on screen, both big and small. So if Gunn is in charge of it, which direction might he go? And what we're going to take a look at is 10 affordable books to possibly speculate on for Superman in the new DC universe and other related characters. So we're going to start off with a mini-series from 1988, Superman for All Seasons by Jeff Loeb and the late Tim Sale. It was a 4-issue mini-series, and it was on the heels of Loeb and Sale's success with Batman The Long Halloween, which had a lot of elements that translated to the Matt Reeves, Robert Pattinson movie. I think there could be elements of A Man for All Seasons that translate into what Gunn is going to do. Specifically, the idea of the grandeur of Superman. A lot of that was laid out in Tim Sale's artwork in this miniseries, and Gunn has said that he's a huge fan of the Richard Donner 1978 Superman film, and the tagline for that film, the advertising was, "You'll believe a man can fly." And I think that's some of the same kind of rhythm that I think Gunn is going to look for in establishing Superman. Maybe going less dark, at least to begin with, and more kind of awe-inspiring as a character. And you can pick up probably the entire 4-issue miniseries of a Superman for All Seasons for about $20. The next book on the list is the first appearance of a character who made her appearance as a supporting character back in 1981 in Action Comics number 521, and that is Vixen. Vixen was supposed to be the first black female superhero for DC Comics. She was supposed to have her own title that suffered from the DC implosion of the late 70s. And actually, instead of her getting published first, it was Bumblebee, who was published in the pages of Teen Titans. But Vixen is a character that was a big part of the Justice League Unlimited animated series. And there have been 2 different incarnations of her, like a grandmother from the past and a granddaughter in the Legends of Tomorrow TV series on the CW. And I do think Vixen presents an interesting character to pursue in the DC universe. Maybe not in the first Superman film, but as we go long-term and flesh out a Justice League of America, I think she would be a really good supporting member. This book is a little more expensive. Obviously, it's going to be more expensive slab, but you can get a raw copy in fine or better condition for probably about $30 to $40. Now, high-grade books can be listed for over $100, but you could probably find a good solid copy in that $30-$40 range. Next on the list is another Superman villain who I think presents an interesting foil for Superman. I doubt that they'll initially be going to Lex Luthor as the big bad in the first movie. The fact of the matter is, with Superman first appearances, most of them are in the Golden Age. Superman and Lois Lane both premiered in Action Comics #1, and Jimmy Olsen, Perry White, Lex Luthor, Mr. Mxyzptlk all came from the Golden Age of comics. And those books, even in low grade, are thousands, if not tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. So we have to look for characters that are of more recent vintage. Also, what kind of antagonist makes sense to give Superman in a feature film? And I think rather than going with somebody like Doomsday, who we've already seen portrayed in Batman v Superman, and just have Superman and another character exchanging blows, what makes Superman a more interesting character is his own crisis within himself. You know, man versus himself, Superman versus himself. Knowing that he has these amazing powers, this awesome responsibility. He's been given a grounded background by the Kents, and a character that could be interesting is in Superman 775, which contains the first appearance of Manchester Black. Now, Manchester Black is a character who is able to manipulate minds, including Superman's. And there is a story where he manipulates Superman's mind to the point where Superman sees things that aren't actually happening, and he has to then check his own moral compass. Even at his lowest point, where Manchester Black has artificially put him, Superman still rises to the person that he wants to be. He doesn't give in to his inner demons in the story, and I think that struggle against himself makes for an interesting storyline. Yeah, Action Comics 7075, you could probably pick this up for about $25, which is what I bought it for at a recent show. I actually hunted for some of these Superman keys after having made this list. Another book that has more long-term spec, but I think makes sense, is Convergent Superman #2, which is the first appearance as a baby of Jonathan Kent, who has become the new Superman in the comics. We've seen kind of a dual version of Jonathan Kent in the Superman and Lois CW show, where Jonathan is the non-superpowered of the twins, and Jordan is the superpowered one. But there's only one son in the comic book continuity, and that is Jonathan, who does inherit his father's superpowers. I think it's going to be a little bit of time before we could potentially see that character pop up. I actually believe that potential exists for this Superman film, which I think it's going to be similar to the Reeves-Pattinson Batman film, which will be kind of a year 2 storyline, where Superman is already established as Superman, but is still trying to figure out how he fits into the superhero role and how the characters around him fit into his life, trying to keep his secret, keep everyone safe, establish himself as a superhero, and be true to the values that his adoptive parents, Jonathan and Martha Kent, instilled in him. A lot of that is what makes Superman an interesting character when it's done right. If that's kind of a little bit of a flashback, then we could see Superman within the course of time marrying Lois and having a son. We'll see. That book, again, is about a book where you can probably get for about $20, although it has hit hot lists every once in a while. The next book on my list is actually a secondary book. It is Action Comics #835, and it is the first in-continuity appearance of Livewire, a newspaper reporter who's struck by lightning and gets lightning superpowers. Her first appearance was not in comic books, but it was in the Superman animated series of the early 90s. Her first comic book appearance is in the In Superman Adventures, number 5, a book that was based on that cartoon series, that is from March of 1997. We have seen the character on Smallville and on Supergirl as an antagonist, and I think she is one of the more popular Superman villains that is still being used. That first appearance in Superman Adventures 5 is about a $50 book. This book is about a $10 book. So, for a book from 2006, an Action Comic books, Action Comics, that's still a pretty good value. Up next on the list is another issue of Action Comics. It's actually from 1988, not too long after Crisis. It's Action Comics 598, and it's the first appearance of the group Checkmate. Checkmate does have connections to Task Force X and Amanda Waller. Waller has served as one of the members of Checkmate in time. So this was when Superman was doing team-ups. So Checkmate's first appearance is in a team-up with Superman, much like Mockingbird in Marvel Team-Up. Again, Amanda Waller, I think, is going to be a cohesive factor throughout the DC properties. I think Gunn is going to continue to use her. He used her in the Suicide Squad. He used her in Peacemaker. You have Viola Davis, one of the best actresses around right now, that it just makes sense to continue to use her and use Amanda Waller kind of as sort of a more evil version of what Nick Fury does for the Marvel Universe. This book, you can probably get this book for less than $10. And if Checkmate does come into full force, that's a nice book to have. We're going to go back just 3 issues to the end of 1987 and Action Comics 595, which is the first appearance of Silver Banshee, a character of Celtic origin who is imbued with a spirit. And since she's mystical in nature and Superman does have a weakness to magic, she's able to really give Superman all he can handle. We have seen the character portrayed on screen in both the Smallville and the Supergirl TV series. So it is a character that has been used and is continuing to be used. Again, what's interesting, along with Livewire, another female character, which I think increases the probability that we're going to see her in a live action at some point. And that book, Action Comics 595, you can get for under $20. Up next, we're going to go back to the 1970s. Superman number 317 from November of 1977 with a classic Neal Adams cover. This book is only about $25 to $30 in high grade. Compare that to Action Comics 233 with a Neal Adams cover, which is Superman no longer having the kryptonite weakness, so it does have that key significance, which is in the hundreds of dollars, even in mid-grade. Neal Adams, one of the more popular artists around. He did work with Marvel and then came over to DC. The Green Lantern work, did the Batman work, did a lot of classic covers for both DC and Marvel in the late 60s into the early 70s. And then he kind of slowed his output, was working on some of the Treasury editions, like Superman, Spider-Man, and Superman versus Muhammad Ali. And in the late 70s, he did a number of DC covers. He did covers for Justice League of America. He did covers for Action Comics, some of the mystery books, the horror books. And he also did this cover for Superman 317. I think it's a nice juxtaposition to issue 233. And again, that book you can get probably for about $25 to $30. Now, the next book on my list, I've been hearing a lot of speculation as to what Gunn might do, and taking the kooky characters that he's introduced in Guardians of the Galaxy, and also that he used in the Suicide Squad, like Ratcatcher, the Polka Dot Man, and all Mongal and Javelin and Arm Fall Off Boy, and just kind of picking strange, weird characters all over the place. Now, I was also thinking about this. James Gunn is 1 month older than I am. So essentially, as kids, we would have been reading the same stuff at the same time. And growing up reading Superman books, I wasn't an enormous Superman collector, but I did pick up his books occasionally. And this character was in Superman books as an antagonist all the time. And that is Terror Man. His first appearance here in Superman number 249 from, what month is that? March of 1972. And I picked this up for just $10. A little bit, it's not in the highest grade. Higher grade, you can probably get it for about $20. Terror Man was taken by aliens, and I think he was from the Old West. He has this Old West motif, and he's sort of based on the Clint Eastwood character, the man with no name in the Sergio Leone westerns, spaghetti westerns of the 1960s. He has a winged horse, Nova Spec. And I always thought that he has, the kind of this southern drawl, and he almost talks like Yosemite Sam, with partners and all that sort of stuff. And I'm like, this character is ridiculous. I was like, ridiculous? Gunn? Maybe. I have to think, if he was reading Superman in the 1970s, he read a lot of Terror Man. And, it could be kind of just a weird, interesting character to use. You could also, as a fan of film, you could use homages to that Eastwood character from the Leone westerns. So again, that book probably about $20 in the upper part of mid-grade. Obviously, it's a 50-plus-year-old book, so it's difficult to get in the highest of grades. Now, I'm going to go to number 1 on my list, and this is a book when we're thinking about who could an antagonist be for Superman, in a screenplay written by James Gunn. James Gunn has already done work in the DC universe and has already used a DC villain portrayed by a very popular, very accomplished A-list actor. And that is Superman number 4, the first appearance of Bloodsport, played by Idris Elba in The Suicide Squad. And it was established in The Suicide Squad that Bloodsport did shoot Superman with a kryptonite bullet. Does it make sense for Bloodsport to play a part in a Superman movie? As an antagonist, you're bringing an A-list star into the film. Gunn has already worked with him, so there is a relationship there. Those characters from the Suicide Squad and Peacemaker are probably going to find their way into the DC universe because they're essentially from the Gunverse, let's call it. They're from the properties that James Gunn has developed at DC, and I think that might make sense to spec on this book. This is a book that you could probably get it raw for under $20. And 9.8s are coming down close to $100. They did hit a peak. The weekend the Suicide Squad movie came out, they hit their peak of $375. So this is a book that ramped up between the comic book boom and movie spec, ramped up way beyond what its value should have been, as now is course correcting. There are no shortage of copies of Superman 4 out there. This was when John Byrne came over after Man of Steel and was doing the writing and the art on the title. I think Carl Kessel did his inks, but he was, being very... There were big print runs for Superman at the time. That's one of the reasons that Superman books don't quite have the value that some other books do. Up until the early 1970s, from like the late 40s to early 70s, Superman was the number 1 selling superhero title. And in the 1960s, he was far outdistancing anybody else, Batman or anybody at Marvel, in terms of sales. The only character that rivaled Superman for sales in the 1960s was Archie. So there are plenty of copies of Superman books out there, even from the Silver Age. And again, a lot of people are thinking Brainiac because we haven't seen Brainiac utilized in the movies yet, and he's really probably Superman's number 2 nemesis after Lex Luthor. But I don't think that they're going to go cosmic right away. Even though Gunn has gone cosmic before, I think it makes sense to establish Superman, his role on Earth, because that's really where the man versus himself, the conflict of Superman versus his own conscience and being able to control his powers and constantly making sure that he is upholding the standards that he has set for himself. That's what makes Superman his most interesting. So, let me know what you think about those books. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you have any other books that you're looking for? Again, I went to a show and I picked up, what, 4 of the books, probably for about 50 or 60 bucks in total. So these books are out there. They're affordable. And much like this book was worth nothing until Idris Elba was cast. And it wasn't until he really was in the movie and we saw the importance of the role that the interest in this spiked, albeit briefly, which is generally what happens with books that are not perpetual keys, so to speak. So leave comments down below. Are there any books that you would include that in Superman spec? Again, we're not going to be able to afford an Action Comics 23. So keep it to books that are affordable and that are available. So anyway, this is we hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for stopping by. And this is Jim saying until... Oh, wait a minute. We'd like to say thanks for stopping by. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you want to, you can take a look at a couple... If you like it, you can take a look at a couple of my other videos here. And this is Jim saying until next time, enjoy your comics.